Yep, as well as the LeBlanc being the most common other one. And I mean, you do see some teams choose to leave more of the OPs up. FlyQuest in the NALCS is a team that's done that a little bit. They ended up getting their hands on the LeBlanc on red side because sometimes teams aren't quite ready for that. We'll see what they do with their last ban here. Maybe they opt into that. Zyra also being banned away, as well as the Cassiopeia. So it looks like they're probably not comfortable playing the Misfortune counter into the Zyra, given the fact that they just banned the Zyra outright with MF still available.
So that's very interesting too, because Tempo Storm wound up banning the Misfortune and the Zyra themselves both when they were on blue sides.
Right, they might not have known that the other team didn't play the MF, and they really just wanted to secure that Malzahar pick, which clearly worked out for them. So
Definitely
overall, a good strategy. And there we see the LeBlanc banned away, and that leaves the Rise up to be first taken right away by eUnited, an extremely strong mid lane pick. Strong in lane, strong roams, just overall a beast in the game. And we see instantly a Corki lock-in followed by a Varus.
Well, the Corki against the Rise has kind of been something we have seen a little bit more. We saw it in LCS, we've seen it in professional play across the world so far. But it also explains the Cassiopeia ban coming out from the side of eUnited, knowing that the Cassio can kind of bully the Rise around before he gets the stacking going for the tier and the Rod evages. But they've also wound up picking up the Varus ball, even though the Ashe was still available on the table. Now that the Malzahar's kind of gone away, they swap back to something that's a little bit more lane focused.
It is a little scary on the side of Tempo Storm. I don't think you would ever call Corki a priority pick. Varus is in the sense that there's only 3 utility AD carries, but you usually expect to get one, which means eUnited's actually able to pick up the Kazakhs as well, and they get themselves the Ashe. So far, I think eUnited's come out pretty far ahead in this draft with what you would argue is 2 OPs, quote unquote, in their draft already.
And it's very interesting to see that once they already knew the Rise was going to be that mid lane pickup, they could have potentially saved the Corki for later on. And as you mentioned, try to pick something powerful up out of the jungle. But Zentinel seems like he might be fine on that Rek'Sai pick. It was banned away by eUnited last game, and it's just going to fall into his hands this time.
Yeah, and they are pretty much matched up in their roles, but like we said, eUnited on paper has a lot more power. I'll be interested to see if Tempo Storm can craft a similar synergistic comp the way they had in game 1. This time, they do have a good handful of poke between the mid and bot lane already. Maybe they go full out lane dominant poke comp. It'll be interesting to see what they do. They ban away the Maokai right away. If you're targeting tanks, it's a chance you don't want an annoying tank flank. They would see the
Swain ban.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that thing looked pretty annoying. And even if you don't think the Swain's that strong, it's just the unknown factor where you don't know the matchups nearly as well as the guy playing it.
Well, Quas is an expert in some of those unknown matchups. Like Swain, it's only the tip of his champion pool iceberg.
Got the Alawi as well. That thing made some experience, made some lives uncomfortable in the LCS last split.
We'll have to see now with the Jace being banned out as well. They're trying to pinch that top lane champion pool, but the Thresh has also been banned out. Both of these teams need to wind up picking a support and a top laner, or potentially a solo laner. Rise could potentially go top lane. Haven't seen it that often anymore.
Right, interesting to see the Thresh ban there with the Karma still available and the Malzahar Zyra banned out. That does make the Karma seem like the most priority pick, and eUnited getting second pick is surprising to see them shrink that pool even more, because Tempo Storm, if they take the Karma here, looks like they're going to do that. I'm not exactly sure what eUnited has prepared.
Well, it's a relatively safe pick from Tempo Storm to just pick the Karma as well. Now they have the option to get the counter pick in for Quas this time around. We'll see how they use it from the side of Tempo Storm, whereas eUnited had that last time. They are going to wind up blocking the Nautilus, which is a fairly standard top lane tank pick. The Nautilus and the Poppy still available. The Maokai had been banned out, so they weren't able to get that. But the Lulu is going to be the response to the Karma. It's one of the other champions in the bottom lane, one of the other support champions that has a bit of poke potential early on. Lulu as a solo laner was known as a lane bully, but still has the protection from the help picks.
Yeah, I can't say I'm too happy with it. And I was hoping Quas was going to bust out the Alawi. He's hovering it. Please lock it in. Yes.
Oh, he gets it. All right.
I mean, I'm so excited for this. Quas is a little bit of a wonky player. He's continuing that trend after the swing with the Alawi. I do like it because, like we said before, not many people know the matchups, and generally I like Alawi into a lot of the tanks. It can be a little slow going in the beginning, but once you start getting those armor pen items and things like that, you become really annoying to deal with because you have that sustain through all those tentacles coming down, and the tanks aren't doing a ton of damage, so I kind of like it in that sense. And just touching on the supports quickly, I think that Karma is almost better than Lulu in every single situation, minus when you're against Malzahar, just due to the way that you interact with his Voidlings and the single target ability to keep someone alive. So I think that was another thing that came out in favor of Tempo Storm.
Well, I've actually kind of lost all focus on the support matchup now that the Alawi has been locked in.
Instantly out of your head. Like, I don't care.
Well, it's still very interesting because that means that these are champion picks that we haven't necessarily seen like in general, like picking the Alawi into a matchup. Yeah, they got the counter pick for this one. We haven't necessarily seen it a lot. The Lulu, as you mentioned earlier, specifically being picked up against the Malzahar. Here this time around, we'll have to see where its kind of power level actually lies on the support spectrum. Now, this going up against more of a traditional kind of combination with the Varus and the Karma.
Right, and I think it was an interesting draft once again where we saw that eUnited seemingly came out very far ahead in the first phase of the draft, getting 2 quote-unquote OP picks, and then on the second half of the draft, Tempo Storm with the pinch in the support pool, they were able to pick up the Karma, which I think is stronger than the Lulu, and then they get the counter pick on top lane, like you said.
And although Sheep, back in his heyday in the LCS, was a bit of a Thresh player, the Thresh ban, instead of taking the Karma away from him, we'll have to see if it's bad Karma for the side of eUnited.
Hey. It was always an interesting conversation. I'm going to ignore your pun, minus that little hey. You get that out of me.
At least I get a chuckle.
You got something. But I always do think it's an interesting conversation to have when you're looking at a player with a lot of weird champions, and you say, do you ban the standard stuff against him, or you deal with his strong pocket picks? He is an example of this in the LCS currently, where people are banning his Echo and his Aurelion Sol, and maybe soon his Katarina, as opposed to things, you know, like LeBlanc against him, or Ryze, these kinds of things. So I think it's always an interesting discussion to have, where you saw eUnited already giving Quas a couple of respect bans with the Swain. They didn't want any more of that. So it'd be interesting to see if he wins again on Alawi going to next week. How much stuff do you have to prep for him?
Well, this wouldn't be the first time we've actually seen an Alawi be a terror in the challenger scene. We had Flaxus, who's actually now on Giants Gaming in the EU LCS, busted it out for some of the first games we ever saw in the NA Challenger Series last time around, and it got banned out. So weird champion picks in Challenger, or unconventional champion picks in Challenger, may wind up being very, very fruitful. But I'm more interested to see what kind of unconventional things happen at the level 1. Last game it was extremely slow, but already eUnited looked like they might be trying to make a little bit of a scene over here at the red buff. Sentinel and Quas are going to wind up sniffing this one out as Gilius and Licorice just walk on over. We'll have to see if this turns into an actual fight, or if it's going to be a smite war. They got a lot of damage coming on the Quas. The quick little stuns coming out from that Nautilus auto attack coming from his passive are just being absolutely massive right now, but Sentinel is able to get the smite down as Hatrix was pulled up from mid lane.
It is an okay, evenish trade for eUnited. It puts Gilius pretty far behind, and it's clear the fact that he has to run all the way back to his own side of the jungle. But at the same time, it hurts Quas because he got chunked out a little bit, gonna have to burn a couple of the stacks on his potion, as well as take a longer path to get back to mid, probably missing a little bit of CS. But overall, good play, good attempt to force onto the red buff, pulled Corki out of lane. But overall, not too much of an impact on the game state, most likely.
No, and Licorice, of course, on the Nautilus by utilizing his Undertow and just the passive AoE coming out from his shield. Nautilus, you don't expect a lot of damage coming out from him in the early game, but not only does he have a lot of damage, he also has a decent amount of wave clear to shove that Alawi in.
Yeah, like I was saying, I don't expect the Alawi counter pick to be solo killing him at level 3. This isn't some explosive bruiser assassin. It's really more of the whittle you down type, and I think that's what Quas is going to go for with the harass with the Qs. Once he gets his E skilled up, he'll be able to pull the Spirit in, and that's when you start seeing those annoying trades, and especially for a tank, you're trying to gank the Alawi. Alawi is known for turning those.
Well, off of that level 1 play, despite the Alawi being a little bit behind in the top side, like you mentioned, Gilius being a bit behind in his jungle start, had to wind up going back after just clearing out a couple of camps, picks up his Hunter's Potion. Let's let Sentinel go out and clear out that Raptor camp, which did get an experience tweak in 7-1.
Yeah, and Quas is behind, down 10 CS already, though the wave is once again on his side. Something Quas is always known for, always having the wave on his side. But this one is not a freeze, it is going into a turret.
Well, it looks like that matchup, we'll have to keep our eyes on that one, just because A, there's a lot of potential explosive action from both sides. Of course, we've been hyping up the Alawi pickup up there, but the Nautilus coming from the CC bot of the League of Legends top lane, having a very powerful damage-dealing jungler like the Kazakhs, there could potentially just be some turnarounds onto that Alawi too.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things to look at in this game. Obviously, the top side is one we touched on a little bit. Looking at the bot side now, you do see that the Karma Varus lane is already pushing in the Ashe Lulu. It is not like a really dominant lane, so even though I was saying I prefer the, as you see, the Spirit pull from Quas here,
a lot of
making it annoying to deal with. But the bot lane, just the matchup isn't one where it's a really snowball heavy matchup. This isn't like Leo and a Corki where they get a kill on you and start running you over. It's just the constant whittling down and the constant loss of pressure for eUnited, where eventually you're concerned that there's going to be this big game-breaking play on the bot side. Though I do have to say Alawi is not the most threatening TP flanking champion. And when she's in the middle of your team and she gets a huge ultimate off, yeah, it's terrifying, but she's not locking down one of your carries for the rest of her team to follow up on.
She's not proto-belting in like a Ken in potentially could have, although not last game. But
Right, not rooting you like a Maokai, that guaranteed point-and-click CC. It's very different kind of fear when he's in the middle of your team in Alawi. You're scared of the damage, not necessarily the CC.
Well, one of the CCs they do have to worry about coming out from eUnited side is now the Rise pickup from Fox. We already saw his potential from the split push on Echo. We saw his ability to be in multiple places on the map. Doesn't have that teleport this game, but of course you have the Realm Warp from Rise, and of course the eventual stacking of that champion. He has a lot of wave clear, he has a lot of dueling potential, and of course he has his own kind of surprise factor if he uses that Realm Warp in team fights.
Yeah, I mean, he is able to 1-3-1 as well with the Realm Warp, like you were saying. He's very much a kind of do-it-all mid laner at this point in the game. He's strong in all phases of the game. He scales extremely well. His wave clear is good. He has the point-and-click CC like a lot of champions that are meta right now. He's able to split push. He's good at team fighting. He really is kind of the do-it-all champion in the mid lane, and that's why he's so high priority in the drafts right now.
But we'll see if Hatrix mentioned he was kind of the focal point to the way that Tempo Storm was playing the game last time around. He had a very control-centric mage in the Syndra. This time around, opting for a marksman in the mid lane, Corki. We've seen people go for the Hextech Gunblade build. We know that Corki has the potential to shove out lanes, but not necessarily known for the same kinds of things that Syndra is, such as single target blow-up potential and just the CC that can start off that chain.
Right, I mean, Corki's mostly known for his poke abilities, and it does get really, really annoying later in the game, but often you kind of want to get some kind of kills early with the package, make some roam plays like that to start snowballing, and then once you get a lot of damage items and you hit a squishy with the poke, you can start chunking people out for half their health bar with a big one. And I mean, I'm hoping to see the Corki get to that point, but it is a little scary given that he's not in the best matchup. It might be hard to get out of lane versus the Rise.
And we'll have to see around the 8-minute mark when Corki's first package spawns on the map. Rise has already leveled up that Realm Warp. He has the Ghost ability as well, so we'll have to see if there's any sort of roaming coming out of that mid lane. But pretty much so far, this game's early lane phase has kind of gone the same way of last game, where both of the junglers are more content to farm up. Teleports have been used to just get back to lane. We see Quas using his in the top side currently now. So just a lot of lane-centric focus play, not a lot of ganking going on.
It's kind of the complete opposite from our casting during the ULOL series. I mean, there you don't even have a chance to breathe and think about what you're going to say next. Here, there's no kills in 8 minutes. What am I watching?
I mean, it's not 20 kills at 8 minutes like the campus series has been, but still, it's the interesting part of this play is the fact that it's more based off of those map movements. Sure, it's not as exciting.
A lot more set plays.
It's not as exciting as a 5-man brush stack in the bottom lane, which may or may not have happened in one of our
Spoilers, Tom.
Games. But it's also some of the things that just happen across the map, and it's really more dependent on what the junglers do. And Sentinel had that Rek'Sai banned away from him in the last game, and I'm really kind of interested to see, does Tempo Storm pick up the pace of this play now that they have a jungler that was taken away from them?
I tend to think that ban in the first game was more of a pinch on the jungle pool, much more than a targeted Rek'Sai ban. Rek'Sai is not so strong in the meta right now that you're going to say, oh my god, this guy's a monster Rek'Sai player. Let's get it away from him. As you see just how annoying that Alawi starts to get. Like I said, it takes a little bit of a while to get online, but once you start getting annoying, you are very annoying on Alawi.
Hasn't even really picked up any of the armor penetration then. Just the Caulfield Warhammers with the cooldown reduction, just going to be able to just keep throwing out those tentacles, keep using the W to get those auto attack resets and make the tentacles slam down. Nautilus himself mentioned he had a decent amount of wave clear. Sure, he's got a CS advantage, but now that teleports have come back in, it's Alawi's time to shine.
The funniest thing to me whenever I'm watching someone play against Alawi is when they're slightly unfamiliar with the champion, they get turned into the vessel, and then they have no idea where the tentacles are spawning after that. We've seen in the LCS in a handful of times where someone's running away and they don't respect these things coming in from one of their teammates even picking up the kills. So
yep.
I'm hoping to see some more of those kind of fade away, oh my god, I didn't realize there was a tentacle there kills.
Well, although Alawi has really turned the bully on in the lane, we haven't necessarily seen any of the big impact teamfight play from either side of this right now. It was more early established dragon control from Tempo Storm last game that really kind of set the pace as to how the game was going, and Gilius kind of being on the map here on the top side, being able to push out lanes and trying to make something happen for eUnited. We'll have to see if the same kind of approach is taken by Tempo Storm. They take things a little bit slower, or if with Gilius now on this Kha'Zix pick, he had it last game, he wasn't able to make a lot of things happen. He is kind of visiting this mid lane here, but Corki still has the Valkyrie available.
And he's got his package up as well right now. We see Sentinel coming in from the backside, trying to get onto the Rise, gets CC'd up and forced back right away. Think twice before you come at the Rise like that.
Yeah, he just kind of tunnels in and gets immediately sent to Rune Prison, and Fox is able to just walk away from that one. So although both of these junglers still hovering around the mid lane. We talked about the established synergy between Fox and Gilius. They weren't really able to get things done last game, but it still kind of looks like Gilius may be favoring that side of the map just a little bit.
And we do see already, though, a 1K gold lead on the side of Tempo Storm, mostly off the back of their CSing. The advantage is coming from the Rek'Sai as well as the bot lane, with Freeze getting about a 10 CS lead, 10, 15 CS lead. And I expect that to keep growing because, honestly, the Varus Karma lane gets more and more pokey as it goes on. Once you start getting the BF swords, these kind of items, your Q starts to deal a lot more damage, and it becomes harder and harder to just hold on to lane. And I'll be interested to see if Tempo Storm's actually able to force a play around the bot side or the top side, because they really do have priority in both those lanes.
Well, looks like that Licorice from eUnited is going to be trying to roam down and really just put the pressure down on Hattrick. There's been a lot of focus from eUnited on trying to get this mid lane, I wouldn't say dominance, but just mid lane presence established and give Fox the mobility he needs to really get his champions going. Last game on Echo, he was 2-0-1, cresting into like the middle of the game. He was a split push threat later on, but he wasn't really able to transition that into a huge advantage for his team. I'm sure he got an inhibitor, but... I
mean, we touched a little bit on the fact that there was existing synergy around the mid lane with Fox and Gilius. You see him open up a little bit on Hattrix, but the fact that you have this existing synergy in the mid lane can be a little bit of a trap where you tend to gravitate towards what you feel is comfortable. So if you have comfortable synergy in the mid lane, people keep going mid lane, keep trying to force around there even if it's not working, when you really need to open up and look at what other options you have on the map and not fall into such basic play patterns.
Well, one of the things that Gilius needs to do is get his farm back on, because the early game advantages that Tempo Storm has in gold right now, while the jungle camps may not be even from a CS standpoint, Sentinel has been able to invade his opponent's side of the jungle, as we saw him stalking on the other side of red buff. The early invade coming out from Gilius and Licorice set him behind early on, and he hasn't really been able to capitalize on a kill just yet to kind of circumvent some of that disadvantage he had early on.
Yeah, but it's not too bad. Like we said before,
No.
the jungle CS numbers can be a little bit deceiving. You usually need to look at the gold to see exactly what the difference is, now that Krugs and Raptors tend to give vastly more CS, but roughly the same gold as the camps on the blue side of the jungle. So if we ever get a chance to look at that, we'll be able to see exactly what the gold difference is, despite it looking like a 15-ish CS difference.
And as you can see right now, it's about 3.6k to 3.2k gold advantage in favor of Sentinel. So just as extra camps, like I mentioned before, he stole the Raptors away early on. Not only a big experience buff, but as you mentioned, a decent chunk of gold as well. And now we see Tempo Storm, the bottom lane, pushing out in their favor. We talked about the Varus with his bully potential. We talked about the Karma kind of being the quote-unquote better version of Lulu in this matchup from both a poking and a sustain standpoint. That's letting Tempo Storm kind of do what they did last game and establish control around the first game.
It'll be interesting to see if they really try and force there. I wouldn't say that their team fight is necessarily stronger. Nautilus is very, very powerful in terms of his damage and tankiness in the early mid game. His damage starts to drop off a little bit later, of course. But it's very hard to force a team fight around the kind of comp that eUnited has put together. It's a very balanced comp that can really do it all, centered around the fact that Ryze is that kind of Swiss Army knife of mid laners right now.
But those Alawi flanks.
The Alawi flanks, I mean, if you see an Alawi in Baron Pit, hopefully, or Dragon Pit at some point in this game, you see all the tentacles that come up, you're going to think, oh my god, this champion's broken, why don't we see it more often? But you also might see the ones in the middle of the lane where the ult is nothing.
Well, that may also speak to the fact as to why Quas picked it into this matchup. Sure, we've talked about the bully potential as soon as she gets a couple of those items under her belt. The teleport plays that could come in, and Tempo Storm's natural gravitation towards those pit areas. They took 3 dragons consecutively in the first game. They made that kind of risky 50-50 Baron call, even though they were able to chunk out some members from eUnited earlier on. Could just play into their hands, but so far, they've just been content, because this is what won them the last game. It's really on eUnited to make the adjustment as to make something happen. They're going to try to start here by jumping on the Hattrix. He forces the flash away, and through the exhaust, the isolation damage is there. Gilius gets on the board.
There we go. We get to see the first blood come in for the Kazakhs. The jungle advantage being one of the things that we were talking about, the jungle mid both being priority picks compared to Tempo Storm, and you get to see exactly what that leads to. It's first blood.
So now with that, mid laner gone from the side of Tempo Storm. A lot of damage has been able to be brought down upon this mid lane tower, and that was just Hattrix getting kind of chunked out from Fox earlier on, and Gilius just coming around to alley-oop slam dunk it.
Yeah, it also comes down to vision control. The fact that they didn't have anything to see that invade coming in. It wasn't any kind of crazy pathing. He just knew that he was going to move over to the blue buff, goes over there, catch him in the transition, gets a free kill off of it as we see Quas continue to turn Licorice into his vessel.
Yeah, that's a lot of purple there. I'm wondering if it's going to be more difficult for Lulu to avoid the purple tentacles, and that's why Quas picked the that kind of skin.
Ooh, That would be a very stupid lore-related mechanic. I hope that's not the case. You get slower move speed near purple things.
That would be interesting. She's kind of like, ooh, as she walks by.
Yeah, I hope that's not the case.
Well, maybe that's why she's the counter to Malzahar. He's got a purple cloak on.
Wouldn't that make her weak to Malzahar? Or just she's trying to kill him and take the purple for her own?
Exactly. She wants the cloak, that's why.
Back to the game.
Well, we're talking about
purple.
We're talking about colors. They took a blue.
That's what I was about to say. We see a blue buff steal there from Tempo Storm. Corki is a champion that's extremely happy to get it. Ryze is a champion that also would have wanted it as well. So getting one of those away from the Ryze onto the Corki is very, very useful. Though, of course, we do see that Ryze does have a fair amount of mana items already. So he's not hurting for it quite as bad as his first couple blue buffs. You know, the 6-minute one really is the critical one that he needs to start stacking his tier, getting a lot of push advantages, and get onto the map.
So that'll be a little bit of a sad thing for Ryze there. He's not going to be able to just free spam his spells to stack that tier as quickly as possible. We'll have to kind of keep eyes on his own mana bar just in case eUnited wants to make something happen across the map. And even though they have gotten themselves first blood, they put pressure down on that mid lane. No turrets have gone down quite yet. The gold advantage is still in favor of Tempo Storm. We're coming across about the 16-minute mark. They're up 24,000 gold to 23. This is that same kind of like 1K window where it's not a huge advantage, but it's the advantage they had game one.
Yeah, and I think that the scary part is the fact that you see that first blood gold come back to eUnited, and they're still down just as much as they were a little bit ago, down even a little bit more. So these standard lanes can be going very well for Tempo Storm. You get to see the Corki with the blue buff being able to spam like crazy, able to trade fairly well back onto Ryze as we see Sentinel opening up.
Yeah, the flash knockup over there, but at the same time, Hatrix is basically going to be trying to be pinched by the duo here from eUnited. The flash, the Rune Prison locks him down, and Gilius gets his second kill of the game on Corki.
Once again, you get to see that jungle mid synergy. We talked about it maybe being a little bit of a trap, but if it's going to keep working out, keep going for it.
Sometimes you spring a trap and it works, as Corki's died twice to that play now. This time he had a little bit of mobility for himself, but now it looks like the rest of the teams are collapsing. The Chain of Crush on the backside comes out from Freeze, but Gilius has already taken out Sentinel, who tried to flash in. Alawi's tentacles have come out, and they are raining pain down. eUnited walks straight into it. They are able to clean up Alawi before she could finish any of those kills, but wow, that's a lot of damage.
Look at the blinking health bars on the side of eUnited. You'd think if Quas could have lived just a second longer, he might have been able to start cleaning up all those kills, but with the fact that Corki had already gone down, it's not quite an even team fight.
And unfortunately, we are going to wind up coming up on a pause. I'm pretty sure everybody on eUnited is wondering where their health bars have gone.
Yeah, they're like, is that champion supposed to do that? That was a lot of damage.
That was a lot of damage coming out from that Alawi play. But that was eUnited making things happen. I think they identified that now that we're crossing like the 15-minute mark of the game, sure, the lane phase is coming to an end. None of the towers have really gone down quite yet. This is where Tempo Storm kind of thrived in the first game. While they haven't taken a Drake for themselves quite yet, they were still playing slow and steady and culminating those gold advantages. But Gilius is finally able to get some moves happening on the map.
Right, and I think the fact that they got that first blood actually opened up that play once again in the mid lane. They were able to get the kill, get the exhaust out, and then once the summoners are down, it's a ton easier to force because you have the summoner advantage. We saw the Ryze able to flash follow the Corki after his Valkyrie was out, which is what set up the kill basically. And that's what a lot of high-level competitive League of Legends comes to, is not the first play being successful in getting you a kill, it's really about the follow-up. So you get to see Flash become kind of this mini objective where I'm not trying to kill you with my first gank, I'm trying to get your flash so I can repeat gank you, set you up, get some kind of advantage.
And that's something that eUnited is being able to execute now in this game, whereas Tempo Storm was the one being able to chain those CCs together last game, and a lot of it came off of the Ashe pick from Freeze. We've noticed this game that Freeze and Sheep in the bottom lane have kind of been more contained onto their side of the map, and a lot of that's coming out from the fact that while Varus has a very similar kit with his ultimate, the Chain of Corruption, can lock people down, he can't do it from across the map.
Yeah, I mean, you get to see what happens when you take away some of those guaranteed setups that we were talking about. The Malzahar ult, combined with the Vi ult, combined with the Syndra stun. You get so much stuff that, like we said, it really does scale kind of exponentially where it becomes so much easier to get picks. You take away a couple of those and you're left with just the Varus ult, and all of a sudden Tempo Storm seems to be struggling to get any kind of plays going, though fortunately they are winning the laning phase, so they're kind of content to not force anything, but if you sit back too long, the other team's eventually going to turn to play, which is what's starting to happen.
Yeah, and now for eUnited, it's going to be, where are they going to be able to do? I mean, currently they can't do anything because their health bars are way too low from the Alawi ultimate coming in, but are they going to be able to take the tempo from that team fight, from the gold that they've just gotten, and are going to convert? Now it's evened up. What can they convert it into? Because they've gotten a Zeal item on Ashe, hasn't yet completed her Essence Reaver. We have, of course, the Rod of Ages ticking away on Ryze. He's stacking up his own tier, and Nautilus is going almost near the completion of that Sunfire kit.
All right, let's take a look at this replay and especially watch the Alawi damage. We see that the Nautilus becomes a huge tank ulted by Lulu, but then we see a huge ultimate by Quas. He gets 4, 5 tentacles up, I believe. And then once the team funnels in to keep chasing him, you see the damage that they can do. He gets one more hit off, but ultimately just missing that little bit of backup from his back line. Either the Corki rockets come in to help him or another VODS snipe. Just not quite enough there.
And that's just with the Black Cleaver, too. That's not having any of this tank itemization quite yet. So if Alawi stays alive just a little bit longer, it's a really bad fight for eUnited, but they are able to come out of that one relatively ahead. However, the pressure on the map exerted from Tempo Storm is still able to get them that first Drake.
It is kind of seems like Quas loves playing those kind of drain tank type champions. The Vladimir he was pretty known for. The Swing's the same way. And Alawi to an extent, once she gets some tank items, starts getting lower and her tentacles start healing her late in team fights. It can be deceptively tanky.
Well, although they may have taken first Drake on the side of Tempo Storm, the side of eUnited are going to be taking the first tower and getting the bonus for themselves in this one. However, Quas on that unconventional Alawi pick in the top lane looks like he's just going to trade it up. Might not be tower first blood, still going to be a tower and tie Tempo Storm in the gold lead.
And you can say it's pretty important to see that gold go solely onto Quasi, someone who's going to be very happy to pick that up, whereas Tempo Storm was sharing the gold more with everyone grouped up around the mid lane.
So now, eUnited have gotten a couple, like we mentioned before, Radovages is completed onto the Rise. He could potentially move into some of these lanes and start split pushing a little bit. Has gotten the second level of his Realm Warp now, so the range on that has increased to an amount where if he is kind of off into a solo lane, he can join up with the rest of his team around something like a Baron, around something like the next Dragon, which actually won't be on the map for a couple of minutes. But he has that ability to kind of split push now, and it's going to be on who does Tempo Storm send to kind of deal with a Nautilus or the Rise.
Oh, we see him opening up onto the mid lane as Tempo Storm was looking to push it down, but didn't go very far, and he just ends up on the side.
Julius going a little bit in, but decides to jump out, realizing his Rise rumbled in with him, but decided not to follow after.
Bit of a ring around the rosy there, where they're hoping to cut them off, and the other team had already juked back into the direction that they came from. Overall, though, the fact that he gets to level 2 in that Realm Warp right as the turrets start dropping is actually great for Rise. That's the ideal timing that the laning phase is starting to wrap up. You don't need that anymore. You can start trying to force plays. You don't need the security of the turrets to keep you safe and farming. Your Rod of Ages is probably stacked significantly, so this is pretty much the part in the game where Rise is very, very happy with turrets dropping.
Well, only one apiece so far from either side, although Fox is whittling away that bottom lane tower in and of himself, as he is going to get the second one of the game for eUnited. So that gold advantage that was slightly 1,000 in favor of Tempo Storm previous to that fight has now been slightly 1,000 in the lead of eUnited.
And eUnited, I think, probably has the map advantage as well. We see them kind of setting up this 1-3-1 once again. The Rise happy being down lane. Corki's a little bit happier to be down there than the Sindra was previously, but still not quite as happy as Rise, who can get to mid lane whenever he needs to with his Realm Warp, whereas if Corki doesn't have the package, it's very hard to follow, though he does have the package currently.
And it's also going to be, what does Tempo Storm do now? Because we talked about during the small pause that before they had the Ashe ultimate to really catch people out of position. If you don't land the Chain of Corruption, you're not going to root anybody down, but you don't have that same hard CC chain. Sure, Karma has a tether. If you land one of the chains, you can eventually chain it into that and then maybe even get a knock-up from MarkZ. It's not the same kind of pick potential they had last game, and eUnited was on their side of the map for a large majority of that game.
Right, I think it's the kind of thing where the team fighting on Tempo Storm takes on a very, very different approach. You can't just blow all your ultimates, press R at a target. Here you have to kind of go in, bait out. You'll probably shoot that VODS ultimate to lock someone down. MarkZ gets a knockup, but you can't hard commit just off that. Your team does lack a decent amount of burst. You don't have the Rise type mid laner who's able to drop a ton of damage. Corki is more of a sustained damage type. Rise obviously good as that as well, but it is a little bit harder. And we see that Fox is going to try and set up a dive, but it's going to get turned around with support from Tempo Storm.
Still did a decent amount of damage to Hatrix and Hellspire there. In the bottom lane, we see just a battle of the tanks as Quas is actually taking out the tower. The Undertow goes out there from Licorice. Still has a lot of HP. The Dreadline's going to follow, but now that Alawi is not taking that tower, the damage and the sustain coming out from all those tentacles is just taking a toll on that Nautilus.
Surprised to see Quas go for that on the other side of the turret. Shows confidence in knowing exactly how much damage his champion can take, because that looked a little risky to me, but he actually walked away at just half health.
Just Alawi things, I guess.
Just Alawi things.
He's already got a couple of extra items in there, as well as finish that Sterix gauge. He's going to be getting that bonus shield. When he takes the damage, it's going to wind up popping afterwards. So in these prolonged tank fights, it's going to give him that kind of pseudo-tankiness. Sure, he doesn't have as many resistance as the ZZ-Rot Portal Nautilus has, but he does have that extra amount of HP, and as you mentioned, the kind of drain tank synergy. It's right up Quas's alley.
Yeah, and we get to see once again that eUnited seems to have a better handle on this kind of 1-3-1 that they seem to like running. Once again, Fox is splitting down another turret. He initially traded onto Corki, got him a little low. Tempo Storm was there to cover, but eventually they had to rotate out of there, and he's still there taking a turret down.
And the early game advantages that Fox and Gilius have gotten out of that mid lane have kind of fallen into the strengths that they have. Like you mentioned, Fox on Rise, wanting to go into that 1-3-1, able to split push down those towers. Gilius himself, now that he has an advantage in the jungle after a small disadvantage in the early stages of this game, he's able to kind of put pressure on the map. It's the Kazakhs that you don't want to run into, whereas last game on the Kazakhs it was he had to jump in and try to force something, but now just his presence around the map is making Tempo Storm play a little bit more secure.
All right, well, moving into the 23-minute mark. Both teams, once again, a little hard to force around Baron, assuming that the Nautilus is kind of stuck holding the Alawi down. And you don't have a great tank, again, to do that still a little bit later into the game. So I'll expect to see United focus more on splitting than forcing around anything. And it does seem like Tempo Storm is struggling to get anything done. I mean, they're basically just holding on under their turrets, minus Foss. We see the Varus ultimate go wide there, stopping any potential aggression.
Well, without the Chain of Corruption, now United knows that they can kind of establish some more presence onto their opponent's jungle side. With all those tier 1 towers down in their favor, they can move in towards the red buff side, start warding it up. We'll potentially see them making bouncing plays between both of those lanes, and then potentially, if all the coast is clear, that Baron is available on the map now. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go for it right away, but Tempo Storm actually getting caught out right here. Sentinel getting landed on with the Enchanted Crystal Arrow. A flash after from Gilius. He's going to wind up using the Void Assault to try to chase after. A heal is going to be popped by Freeze, saving his jungler as Fox winds up coming in here with the Realm Warp. So eUnited, they established that vision and just immediately went to go for a pick.
Yeah, assuming they clear out some of the tunnels here, they'll be able to force around the Baron. It'll be interesting to see if they actually try and start it off.
It was a very good force, and that's one of the things that happens. You don't actually need to kill the jungler, you just need to stop him from being able to get back on the map. You see that he was forced to ult into the blue side jungle away from it, but it looks like there's too much vision remaining for eUnited to really force around it. Once again, Quas opens up on the Nautilus under the turret with about 1 million tentacles helping him out.
Yeah, in the meantime, Quas is tanking that tower, by the way. It's just he doesn't really care.
Yeah, and you got the Vessel off. I'll be interested to see if that manages to get some more damage onto Nautilus. Nope, tentacle missed.
Tentacle miss, but he's
oh, there's another one.
Oh,
that's what I'm talking about. If you're not used to playing against Alawi, you think, oh, I'll just recall. No.
No, it actually stops it too, and he is going to wind up coming back in the lane with a very low HP bar, but that's because he's got Gilius coming around the side. And Quas had used the ultimate for harassment underneath the tower, is going to wind up getting a Vessel down onto Gilius, but with the isolation damage coming out from Kazakhs here, isn't going to be enough. Quas has to flash away. The Sterix Gauge shield has been popped. He's trying to get damage onto Gilius. He will wind up trading 1-for-1.
And unfortunately, Tempo Storm doesn't look like they're going to be able to do anything with the pressure that Quas is drawing. He draws, gets the 2v1, gets a pickup kill onto the jungler. You think this is the perfect time to force around Baron. We'll see if they're able to actually do it. Tempo Storm is posturing a little bit around there, just getting the flash out of Rise, though.
They get the flash and the ghost out of Rise at the same time. So while they haven't necessarily gotten a lot of tangible things on the map, they have established more of the control around the Baron pit. So they've been able to clear out the wards that United had in their jungle that prompted the pick on Sentinel earlier, and have secured their own side of the map, which isn't a lot in a progressive sense, but does secure them as long as Quas can keep doing things like this.
And this is where the champion mastery really shows here. Quas is able to flash away from some damage here to wait long enough to get his reset back up on his Q, which is enough to finish off Gilius. That little bit of drain tanking being just the last thing you need to stay alive. The Sterric Gauge being popped as well, giving him the extra health to not go down early in that fight.
That's a shutdown spree on Quas too, so even more golden advantage of the Alawi. 1, 2, and 0. Doesn't look like the most impressive scoreline right now, but he is still a force to be reckoned with.
I think that's worth pointing out is the fact that if you just look at the recap of these games, you might think Quas isn't playing that well, but in both games, he actually drew a ton of focus from eUnited and was able to survive through it, as we see Varus gets blown up.
Oh, Freeze landed a lot of skill shots last game, but this time around, he's on the receiving end of that Nautilus hook as the World Breaker Nautilus game winds up helping take him down, and with that wave clear gone from the side of Tempo Storm, that's going to be a free mid-tier 2 tower for the side of eUnited.
This is one of the reasons I think a lot of teams prefer Nautilus compared to some of the other super tanks in the top lane right now, is he does have a little bit extra catch potential. If you're ever caught out with CC or just not minding what you're doing, it's very easy to grab someone. The hitbox on that thing is crazy, and it's going to lead to a Baron attempt for eUnited.
Yeah, and Freeze still double-digit time left on his death timer. They're going to go straight away for this one. Quas, teleport has been used. He has the ultimate available. Sentinel's already got into the pit, but Sentinel goes down. Now there's no smite for the smite one. That's going to be a secured Baron from the side of eUnited. Are they going to turn the dredge line from Nautilus? Did miss. Quas still has ultimate available, but no flash to get into the fight. Looks like they're switching sides over here as Patrick's going to split everybody up with the Corki package. He had that available. Now he's kind of left Quas out to dry on the opposing side of the map.
That was a, I'm out of here. Good luck, friend.
All right, well, he has a blast plant available, but he is just going to walk away. The problem is here, if you're on eUnited, you've just gotten Baron, and you don't want to walk into an Alawi. Give it up.
No, I think playing it safe here is the right call. With that Baron buff and the fact that you've generally been able to pressure around the 4-man group, the 1-3-1, I don't think you need to get into a fight right now and win the team fight. You generally have map pressure the whole game, so you're happy to get this reset off and get back onto the map.
Well, so far the story of this entire best of 2 has really been the pick potential from both of these teams. As soon as you catch somebody out of position, you're able to capitalize on something because of it. Game number 1 was kind of a highlight reel of crowd control and how Tempo Storm is able to take every single dragon and eventually a Baron off of it. This time around, it's eUnited using their own pick potential in the form of the Nautilus hook to immediately prompt with the Baron. And while Tempo Storm is able to respawn with this mid lane tower, eUnited are looking to flash in. They get the hook onto Sentinel. The Enchanted Crystal Arrow is going to wind up landing on Freeze, but an immediate QSS right there. The redemption goes down from the side of Tempo Storm, and Quas is in the fray. His ultimate's been popped. There's a lot of damage coming out, but Alawi has already gone down. Sentinel falls as Rise picked up that kill, and Hatrix is able to get one for himself.
Gilius is living on like 1 HP after that. Thank God he got the reset to get out of there because he was so close to going down as well.
And that was a fight that Tempo Storm would have loved to have taken, would have loved for Quas to be alive just a little bit longer, but the Baron buff and the amount of gold that
Rise
United is, whew, that's just the power of Rise too. He's gone back, picked up his Morello Nomicon immediately after. Has his Seraph's Embrace, a fully stacked Rod of Ages, and now all of a sudden, off of that Baron, things are falling apart for Tempo Storm.
Right, looked like it could have been a pretty close fight, almost going 2 for 2, ends up snowballing completely out of control with eUnited being able to grab a handful of turrets and picking up the Corki on the back end of that fight. Looking like they're going to push down the bot inhibitor as well.
And that is a lot of towers going down off of the back of just one fight. The Chain of Crushing does go out onto Gilius, but he's actually able to cleanse that one off with the QSS. It looks like the eUnited is looking to turn this one around. There's an exposed inhibitor. All they have to do is push Tempo Storm back. The teleport comes in from Licorice as well, zones them away from their own base. That's one inhibitor down. They just rotate around with a couple of minions taking up that tower. It was already low from 4. That's going to be a second inhibitor now from eUnited, and Tempo Storm, they can just watch.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty happy to just go around and play the math game. They probably don't need another fight to win this game, really, after taking those 2 inhibitors, get another reset off, and head up to the top side to take down that last inhibitor.
Yeah, so now eUnited, things are looking extremely good for them, and it's kind of very similar to game number 1, but it's on the opposite foot now. This time around, it was eUnited. They weren't stacking dragons, they were stacking up kills in the earlier stages of the game. Once it crested 15 minutes and the mid lane kind of got unlocked with that Rise pick, they pulled the trigger, they went for a Baron take that looked like it would be risky, but they secured it, and things are going in their favor.
I mean, that's generally how the game goes when it's ever this kind of close 2 styles clashing matchup. One of them just needs to get their foothold, and then once they have it, they're able to close the game out pretty quickly. Here, eUnited, they get that Baron, they get a couple of kills, and off the back of a fight shortly after the reset, they're basically taking over the whole game.
Yeah, and now with 2 lanes of super minions pushing down, the game could be theirs just to take in general. As Rise going to Ghost, flashes in, gets the Rune Prison down onto Sheep. The chunk of damage coming out onto Karma. Fox is on a rampage.
You get to see the power of those Danish mid lane. Oh, he's not Danish, is he? I think I spoke too soon. I just want to say Danish because I love Danish.
European.
European mid laners as well. Special place in my heart for the Danes.
I think we all do. It's also a special place in the heart of eUnited in general for these towers, as they've now taken 8 towers. They had 3 before the Baron, and then they wound up just taking 5 consecutive towers off of that. So all in all now, this Baron buff has been a huge boon for them. It has now fallen off, but it's broken the game wide open. The Zizirot portal, not the same one that we're kind of used to seeing. This is the newer one that is extremely well at these short-range sieges, just slowly but surely whittling away on that last tower. And as you mentioned before, Mark, they don't even have to fight here with those 2 lanes pushing it.
Yeah, at some point, I think Tempo Storm's going to have to hope eUnited engages and tries to dive this turret, which can be very dangerous to do versus an Alawi with the tentacles spawning, and you have to run all the way through them to get back out. But if eUnited wants to play this slow, I think that's the right play. Just keep whittling down that turret. They seem like they're backing away, giving up on it for now. Maybe moving for the Cloud Drake that's spawning soon.
It's been a little while on the map since they've taken on all those towers. They might want to go back and pick up some items here. Fox himself has completed his Death Cap. There's a Phantom Dancer on top of a Last Whisper and all the items that Ash has secured for himself. Definitely having a stellar performance with some of these arrows here. Only 1, 0, and 5 for himself. Has yet to die. The Redemption had been picked up by Lulu earlier on, and we already see Nautilus, the unkillable tank he is, has the Spirit Visage, has the Sunfire Cape, and of course we mentioned earlier the Zizirot.
I think I have to go back to the initial point that we had in the first phase of the draft, where you give up so many power picks centered around that mid lane for eUnited. That's really how they broke this game open. Once they got that first blood, they're able to redive it. Once that turret's down, you start splitting the Rise, and from there, they basically have controlled the game.
Yeah, the Rise itself has really kind of been the biggest differentiating factor in this one, whereas Tempo Storm on the red side this time had to ban Camille, had to ban Rengar, had to ban LeBlanc. That left the Rise open because the side of eUnited was like, well, we have first pick this time around. If Fox is very adept at playing as shown in this game, he's going to blow it wide open.
Yep, it looks like they adapted pretty well between the games, figuring out what they wanted to ban, got Quas off the Swain onto the Alawi. Still a weird counter pick, something that Licorice did struggle with, but he ultimately hung on just well enough to give his team enough time to snowball. If he was playing any worse, I mean, you look at Quas maybe being able to take this game over completely. There's been a handful of fights where if Quas was just a little bit further ahead, he probably wins them for his team.
Although stronger than a solo person has been that duo synergy of the Fox and Gilius, the mid lane jungle. Last game they weren't able to get it off. This time around 2 kills came of it because of that, and now they have 9 out of the 11 kills for eUnited in and of itself. The amount of split push pressure that Rise has been able to put on the map, we talked about now that Kha'Zix has kills on himself. The fact that he jumping in and assassinating somebody is a very, very likely scenario, especially if you get on Varus, especially if you get on Corki in this kind of double marksman composition. The threat of him being around was enough to just scare Tempo Storm off of some of these plays where they needed to chain their weaker CC compared to last game.
And eUnited having more standard team comp, showing the strengths of it. They have the tank able to hold on versus the counter pick. They have the burst potential from Rise, the mid lane control, assassins with resets, engage, defensive options with the Lulu pick. So their team comp is very, very well suited for anything that you can really throw at it, and we get to see that they just dealt with the stranger pick of Alawi easily.
So they dealt with the picks, they've dealt with the earlier stages of this game, and they're able to take 2 inhibitors, but how did they end the game? With Baron Buff back on the map, Rise and Kha'Zix here are just going to be able to do it themselves, and there's no way that Tempo Storm has any vision whatsoever, considering how long they've been in their base. But they needed this Baron Buff to really break into the base, even though they had those 2 inhibitors open already. Can they close it out, or is it going to be dangerous taking one of those fights in the Alawi?
I mean, it is dangerous always to dive the Alawi, but if you can't break the 3rd inhibitor turret with a Baron buff after you take the 2 respawning inhibitors again, I assume they're going to go for those first, then you're probably playing the game a little bit too safe. They do have a really large gold lead, 6K at this point. Not as big as they come, but big enough to be able to close the game out.
Well, it's all up to them to see if they can close that game. They see the Rise 15,500 gold on him, a 2,000 gold lead directly between him and Corki is making up a lot of this differential. The Nautilus, who was behind in the earlier stages of the game, has caught up to the Alawi, and the AD carries, they haven't been the biggest influence on this game, but the CC that they provide, the poke that they're able to provide, especially coming out from Ashe, as soon as somebody jumps in on somebody, if there's a rune prison, the point and click stun goes into the targeted stun for the Enchanted Crystal Arrow. I mean, like last game.
Yeah, I mean, you see the importance of good farm as well. The fact that definitely is only about 1,000 gold behind his crazy snowballing mid laner is pretty surprising to see. It's 15K, 56K to 14.5 basically. Very, very close gold overall.
He's doing his role perfectly. Last game, he needed to be the wave clear of the 3 in the 1-3-1 kind of composition, and here he is doing it again. He has the Kha'Zix to kind of help him out if the Vault W have those void spikes coming out, but between the 2 of them, they're doing it well, and as soon as Sentinel just steps out of position, they're able to pounce on him. It's another kill for Gilius. It's now 6-1 and 2 for his Kha'Zix. The inhibitor's going to fall. Fox's health bar is going to drop a little bit low. The redemption hasn't popped to help heal him up, though, and that's going to be those 2 respawn inhibitors going down.
And with that, looks like they're going to get their reset off. They got a little too low on that play, going to back off, heal back up before returning once again to the top side of the map. Hopefully this time able to take the 3rd inhibitor turret, ending the game.
Well, they still have a little bit of time left on that Baron buff. It's still rather fresh, so they could have that. The Elder Dragon is also going to be available on the map. Both teams with only 1 Cloud Drake apiece in this game means that it's not going to be the biggest boon, but if you already have this gold advantage, you have items in your inventory, that extra damage boost might just be what you need to push it over the edge.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like going for the Elder Drake too much. You probably waste too much of your Baron buff timing, which is probably more important for ending the game, just in terms of the tankiness it provides to your minions. And we saw just how easily eUnited already popped Rek'Sai in that last fight. He got hit with 1 CC ability and he's instantly dead. I think it shows that eUnited doesn't have to be too scared about diving this next turret. I know initially I was saying be careful for the Alawi, but if you're going to be able to pop the tanks that quickly, I don't think you need to be too scared.
They just have to be able to pull the trigger on this one. They have the Nautilus that's able to start the engage. They have an Ash Enchanted Crystal Arrow. If they get engaged on, they have the Lulu Wild Growth to just turn that fight around. So we'll have to wait and see. As you mentioned, there's only this one lane left with an inhibitor up for the side of Tempo Storm. And Gilius is away on the bottom side.
Yeah, I was about to say they decided to split him away to pull a little bit of attention away. You see the Corki, one of the good wave clearers for Tempo Storm, is down, leaving only Freeze on the Varus left to help with the wave clear. And hopefully we see United pull the trigger a little bit here and start posturing more aggressively around the turret.
Well, it looks like they are going to want to getting another hook onto Sentinel to start things off, and he gets chunked out. He will not go down this time, but he needs to fall back to base to heal, as does Freeze as he gets poked away. So now there's super minions wailing away on the base as Hatrix is trying his little quirky best to clear things out, but Quas is going to go in. He pops the ultimate, but he immediately goes down, and now eUnited knows the coast is clear. They are funneling into the base of Tempo Storm.
Ooh, Valkyrie forward, probably not the best decision there.
No, Corki goes down, Rek'Sai goes down, and that means the Nexus will go down. It's going to be eUnited tying the series at 1-1.
A very good bounce back game out of eUnited. We go with the tie, 1-1. Got to be happy with that, given how the first game went. And overall, it's a very interesting series where we saw a lot of interesting picks and a couple different overall strategies on how to play the in-game out.
Yeah, both teams kind of looked like they came out of pick and ban phase with a very solid plan as to what they wanted to do. Tempo Storm in game number 1 had the slower ramp-up time until they were able to take Dragon Control and eventually a Baron and end the game. This time around, it was more about the action coming out from that mid lane and the jungle kind of synergy from the side of eUnited. Their 1-3-1 split push eventually was able to pull Tempo Storm in too many directions.
And I think this is a very nice series for both teams in a sense. Obviously, both them want to win, but you do have positives to build off of going forward. We see that Quas with his counter picks is able to get stuff done on the map. It's not, just, Quas is picking weird stuff for the sake of it. On the flip side of eUnited, you do see that they have that strong jungle mid synergy. They're able to rely on that to get stuff done on the map, though it did take a little bit longer than you'd want to get online. So they have some identities, but they still need to branch out from there and get stronger at executing on them.
Well, both teams looked like they knew how to play the map too, which is one of the things you've always kind of said about Challenger. A lot of it may be a little bit more individual skill. It may be more about kind of certain players being able to get on comfort picks or very meta picks that they may have been very well practiced on. But both of these teams, from just the compositions overall, whether it was the pick potential, whether it was the split pushing, both of them showed that they know exactly what to do in order to push and pull teams across the rift.
Right. I mean, we've been talking about how it's almost like a mini LCS this time around, where it's not just a bunch of young guys who work their way through the qualifiers. A lot of these teams do have infrastructure behind them. They have coaching staffs. They have experienced players, and overall I expect the level of competition to be a lot higher than usual for the challenger scene.
And that also means, of course, that if you have teams that are very adept at playing the map, they're also very adept at punishing mistakes, which is one of the things that eUnited was really able to do in the middle stages of the game. Around like the 29-minute mark, they're able to wind up taking a mid lane fight. They're able to get 2 inhibitors right off the back of that. So as soon as Tempo Storm stepped out of position, they were able to capitalize.
Right, we see that they initially start off on the tank, which can be a little scary, but the fact that Sentinel dodged that, it hits Varus, not too bad, but Quas gets opened up on. We see the power of the Alawi pick here, the fact that he's able to stay alive at such low health for so long. They're actually able almost to turn this around. Gilius barely gets the reset to get out and ends up just being a 2-for-1 as opposed to the potential 2-for-2. And it's really important, the fact that he was able to get out, keep that Baron buff up. And then we saw, once that happened, the Rise just ran straight up mid, blew the Corki up, and from there, they were able to start taking the inhibitors down.
Yeah, and that's just one of those things that we mentioned. Once you punish those kinds of plays, once you blow that map control like wide open, it's pretty much just a playground for the team that has the Baron buff at that point. Tempo Storm was kind of able to do it in game number 1, and eUnited was the one that came out on top in game 2 here.
Right, and now through the magic of the internet, I'd like to welcome Gilius to the broadcast. Gilius, are you here, buddy?
Yeah, I hear you guys. Hey, guys.
Hey, how's it going? Congrats on winning that second game and being able to tie up the series.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it feels a bit weird that we went 1-1, but at least one win, you know.
I mean, you guys are probably more used to it than some of the other NA players. We haven't had ties before until this time.
Nah.
Yeah, I thought I would escape best of 2, with this season, but yeah, I couldn't escape it, you know.
But it seems a little bit interesting too, because both you and Fox have come over from the EU LCS, and you wind up in your first matchup here getting placed against Freeze. So I guess it's kind of familiar stomping territory. How do you just kind of feel about the overall competition in the North American Challenger Series this split?
I feel like this split it's actually weaker than the usually. I think GCU and Tempo Storm are like the only competition we have. I think Tempo Storm will probably be like the 3rd best team, and then between us and like the game between us and GCU will decide who will be first. So yeah, I think it's not that hard this year.
That's interesting to hear because I think a lot of people see some of these rosters that have been put together on the challenger scene and are expecting it to be actually very competitive just based off, especially GCU being one of them in Tempo Storm. But interesting to hear that you think there's a divide between the two teams. I want to ask you a little bit about the synergy that you have with Fox and the fact that it seems like that's how you guys like to focus a lot of the resources. You got the first blood this game as well as being able to re-gank that lane and get another kill off. Is this something you guys consciously do or is it just kind of natural within the team?
I feel like at this point it's natural. Like I just like out of a habit I just path mid, and Fox usually plays really aggressive, so I just back him up. And with the mid control, we just try to influence our side lanes and influence the map in general with vision. So yeah, it's just a habit at this point, I would say.
You know, we definitely were able to feel your influence in game number 2. You got Kha'Zix in both of those games. Was it a little bit surprising to see something that powerful left open?
I actually thought they would ban it, so they left it open in game 1, and their answer was why. And I think he played really well that game. Like I never actually played that matchup in a scrim, so it was kind of unexpected for me. But in general, I think you should not let Kha'Zix open in this meta, because in the last patch I think they removed that the mechanic that Lee Sin E can spot out Kha'Zix in his ulti. So before that nerf, you could actually play Lee Sin into Kha'Zix, but nowadays you just first pick Kha'Zix and you have no counter matchup. So yeah, I just think the champ's a bit too broken.
Speaking a little bit just about unconventional matchups you might not be used to, you played against Quas, who whipped out the Swain, and then the Alawi picking up a 1v2 kill against you. Was that something you've ever played against? Have you played against a really strong Alawi player before?
I faced it sometimes in solo queue, but in solo queue I just try to like ignore that lane because he will one-shot us both.
Yeah.
And I thought like I went to gank him at bot lane. I thought, okay, he's low on mana, half health, I can kill him, and then he one-shotted me anyway. So, yeah, it's a pretty strong champion.
Yeah, I mean, that's tend to be what it's known for, surprising with the 1v2 whenever you try and gank it. Often best to just kind of ignore it and hope it doesn't take over the game.
Well, you guys were able to overcome the unconventional Alawi and Swain picks. You did take a 1-1 series, so Gilius, congratulations to you and eUnited for taking a 1-1.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for the interview, guys. That's only the first series of the day complete, so we still got more League of Legends action headed your way. In just a couple of minutes, we're going to catch game number 2 between Team Gates and Delta Fox. The NA Challenger Series will continue right after this. They're going to try to start here by jumping on the hat-trick. He forced the flash away, and through the exhaust, the isolation damage. At the same time, hat-trick is going to be trying to be pinched by the duo here from eUnited. The flash to the Rune Prison locks him down, and Gilius gets his second kill of the game. Now it looks like the rest of the teams are collapsing. The Chain of Crush on the backside comes out from Freeze. The Gilius has already taken out Sentinel, who tried to flash in. Alawi's tentacles have come out, and they're raining pain down. eUnited walks straight into it. Crosses the flash away. The Staric Stage Shield has been popped. He's trying to get damage on to Gilius. He will wind up trading 1-for-1. Redemption goes down from the side of Tempo Storm, and Quas is in the fray. There's a lot of damage coming up, but Alawi has already gone down. Baron buff and the amount of gold that United is. Ooh, that's just the power of Rise. Flashes in, gets the Rune Prison down on the Sheep. The chunk of damage coming out on